Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Hype episode 4. So, I did had three topics that I wanted to talk about today, each in some variation of console to PC to handheld. And I wasn't really going to bring up console as much, it was just going to be a very general aspect. But then The Plague's Tale Requiem came out, or not officially came out, it's the 17th, so like next day it's going to come out. But there's already graphics comparisons already coming out, and basically I don't know what to fucking think right now. It's kind of crazy because it kind of looks like that the consoles are heading back to 30 FPS, which is, uh, for me, it's pitiful. It's fucking pitiful. But it looks like we're heading back to it, so it's just like, yo, what's going on? And so I wanted to talk about that, talk about floors and ceilings of that, and then also looking into Nvidia using that scale just because we don't have the new Radeon GPUs yet, and just kind of seeing what's the future outlook, what we're really looking towards. And after that, just talk about handhelds a bit, just because that seems to be exploding a little bit more. So let's get into what's the goal. As you can see, I tried displaying some stuff and it looks kind of off, but I also don't have my camera right. There we go. Okay, so I had it right before. Some things to learn from next time. All right, so we're going to talk about this. So consoles, floor to ceilings, and the framing of importance. And I remember this very well because I did a lot of research on these consoles when they were about to come up in 2020 because I was deciding whether, if I want to upgrade to a console or, start up and get a PC. Because at that time I had the cash for one of them. And, as much as, I love PC gaming, which in these last 2 years, like it's exploded and I love it. I was still like, would I still need a box? And so I was comparing both of those type of identities, but also more in depth of like what are the ceilings and what are the floors of these boxes. So I wanted to talk about that a bit because one is more simpler than the others. When we first introduced the Series S, I want to start with that first, just because it's the more focused and centered one. It was basically pitched as the 1080p performance. 1080p 60, it's going to get you playing video games, full stop. $300, you're playing that video games, Xbox exclusives, Game Pass, all that stuff. And its ceiling was 2K. It's not guaranteed, but it can play some games in 2K. Some examples were Tiny Tina's Wonderland, Forza, just some games that it allows for 2K, but not guaranteed. Which that was the contract made. Um, Basically, it's that type of thing where it's like, look, if you just care about playing video games or you have kids, like that was it. And now we're looking at a situation where, it was kind of assumed that with 1080p we would hopefully stay at like 68 FPS. That's not the case. And then it's even more worrying when we get to the PS5 and Xbox Series X. Because, and I've always said this, and I think I've mentioned this in past conversations, but basically, I'm more of a person where I was like, they were shooting too far in the moon for 4K gaming. I think that's it's ludicrous. It's demanding too much power and too much uh, equipment for proper 4K gaming. A lot of the games that are being shown in 4K for consoles are just checkerboard up, 2K up. And so I never really liked when I researched how it was. But they was back in 2020. They flashed Doom internal running in like 4K 120 hertz, and we could play uh, Valhalla in 4K 60 and stuff like that. So it's like in 2020, you were kind of promised, hopefully, these games would stay consistent for 4K for that type of scalability. Now, I'm not going to talk about Gotham Knights because that's another game that had a bunch of limitations. But more of that, I think, as we saw more evidence through some of the previews, it's going to be a janky ass game. Just pure crap. And so I'm not going to throw that one as a prime example, but it is capped at 30, so it's just, I want to throw that more in the devs more than anything. Dev time, not given enough time, should have been delayed, all that stuff. The one thing I want to harp on is Plague Tale. Now, just for reference, Plague Tale Requiem is a very demanding game that I believe was more or less given money and basically based to just basically, how would you say? It was fueled for Nvidia, for their new cards that were coming out. But more importantly, when it's a very demanding game, but even still, you would have suspect, okay, they would have a 60 frames per mode. No. It has 30, and even the 100 hertz mode that the devices sometimes have for PS5 and Xbox runs 40. So it's stuck between pure garbage and mediocre, which is just, it's terrible. It's fucking terrible. And I looked at that and I was like, oh, whoa. Are we already hitting stop gaps with these systems? 2 years in, and we're hitting stop gaps. And that's very concerning because these are third parties. And while, like, some people will say, well, the first parties are going to make up for it, 60, 30%. They're going to have some scalability, which is true because they are working in privatized hardware. But also, this is all PC specs at this point. All these systems have a basic outline of what PC layout they are. They shouldn't have this hard of a time optimizing for two sets and basically prioritizing 60 frames. The fact that there's now limiting factors to 30 frames. Now I'm concerned. Now I'm like, how's Hogwarts going to look? Is it going to be stuck at 30, possibly 4K, or maybe 2K if it drops like that? Like, what's going on? And so it's not red flag right now, but it's more of a yellow flag. Because if we're coming to a point where these games are coming out and they're already taking the hits of like 30 frames per second, which again is unacceptable to any degree. It's bullcrap. Even retro games are running at around 45 to 60 hertz because, while it was slow motion, it was also fighting games and retro games and stuff like that. But even still, 30 frame area should be dead and gone now. And it's just putrid that it's like, 2 years later, are we getting back to that? Like, what the fuck's going on? And so that and it also kind of reestablishes the PC mantra of like, you get a PC, you have all the control of the world how you want to run your games. And with consoles, you're fucking just limited to whatever the manufacturer give you, the game makers give you. You don't have any control of that. And so it's just kind of crap. And again, I don't want to seem like a Debbie Downer, but it just kind of reaffirms my thing of like, yeah, these consoles, they ain't it. So that was kind of like my first big thing I wanted to talk about, just because it was kind of fascinating to see this pop up today, and then it was just kind of frustrating seeing the discussion kind of pivot towards people just being like, oh, it's 30 frames, it's no problem. It's like, dude, okay, either A, you've never played 60 frames, or you don't feel the difference with high refresh rate, which I don't know how to tell you. Like, play competitive shooter with 30 frames now. It's terrible. It's horrible. You're so stiff, the movements, it's terrible. I can never do that, ever. I don't even play any... Like, I do have a small console with me, but it's mostly for media. And then the Switch, Switch, you're dealing with that. But even still, just terrible. All right. now on to my next goal, which is Nvidia, but also Radeon. We don't have any Radeon specs, so I'm just gonna preference this in Nvidia. So going over the specs and the launch from the 4090, it seems that, big success, a huge jump in frame rate, and basically my question, it's kind of a big question, is what's the goal? Like, what are we really trying to get out of the next gen of computers? You know? Because when I'm thinking of what we accomplished at the end of this gen, I feel like we accomplished nearly everything what everyone wanted, kind of. And just to scale it back a couple of generations, when we looked at the 10 series, we were looking at 4K possibilities, like viability, GTA, some of the older games, like it was possible to get 4K. And then, more importantly, and a big proportion of the Fortnite boom was the high frame rate 1080p, which not a lot of people want to talk about, but like back then, if you had a 10 series card, even 1060, and variations in the 980, stuff like that, like you were able to very much game at 1080p and be in that centerfold of like the Fortnite boom, Apex, but also what's the other game I'm thinking about? I feel bad. Players Unknown Battleground, PUBG. There it is. But yeah, like you were able to, make a budget build and be able to play those type of games, which took off during that type of era. The mid 2015s, and so the middle of the 2010 era. And then we got to the 20 series. For Nvidia suspected, it was introducing ray tracing, the idea of viability, not much of a performance jump. As a lot of people have told, the 10 series with the 1080 Ti, it was as strong as the 2070 Super, which looked really bad because if you scale that down much, the 1080 Ti was only not much far away from like a possible 2080. So as you can see, Nvidia during that time was kind of like testing out a new prospect, but not really giving us more in performance. It wasn't until the 30 series that you really saw RTX get a bit more buff, a bit more viable, but not really. I would say possibly in 2K. 1080p you can, but I think it's all in agreement that it's kind of a waste at 1080p. You don't really get that good visual difference of it. 4K is like a concept. Not to throw shade, but it's like maybe something you turn on for a couple of seconds. Even the 3090 Ti, like you couldn't really play on it. You experienced it for a couple of seconds and then you shut it off. But a good thing with the 30 series was it increased the high frame rate again. So 2K gaming was very much possible for that. You have computers now with 1440p, like 240p frame rate, 240 frame rate, and then just kind of the 1080p also getting 360 support. So it's like bigger steps for that. And then now with the 40 series, I guess the biggest question is where we're going from there. Because if you look at and this is from Ars Technica, you can look through this, 4K, huge kind of, huge strides in it. We're getting past 100. We're getting through all of this performance now that's just blowing the last generation out. and it's pretty cool. You know, it's very good. It's very good. But also, it's like, all right, so what's the end goal? And that's always been my biggest thing with that. Uh, you know, as you can see here, you know, for 4090, it's viable. Again, some of the others, it's kind of possible, but it's also like, eh, it's gonna take a tank, you know. But like I said, um, yeah, as you can see here, it's hitting the 60 barely with 4K max RT high. Again, it's a lot of playing around for you, but it basically the ceiling for Nvidia for this one, going off of the 3090, is basically, oops, went, went a bit ahead. Basically, it's like we're at 4K Ultra RT, but it's like, all right, where we're going from here. And so there's a lot of just questions to be made, because if it's like, at one point do we say we need to reinvent the wheel and like do something new? And I get ray tracing is possibly going to be the biggest thing, but also it's like, you know, well, it's there for some people, but again, if you're a competitive shooter, if you're someone who's in the competitive scene, you don't really care about that. And so it's like, we're are we splitting to do two different paths? Are we like, what are we doing here? You know, are we caring more about rasterization? Are we just going to go full in on this? Because that's the 4090. You know, 4090 can hit 4K max ray tracing high. So going off of that, it's all downhill for the rest of the cards. And that's also something of a concern, because they canceled the 4080 12 gigabyte. And if you could check the tech power up, you could see that the 4080 12 gigabyte speculatively, and again speculatively, was going to be at a level not even at a 3080, and maybe around a 6080 XT at best, closer to 3070 Ti. Like that, the specifications wasn't great, and it was really supposed to be 4070. But even then, if you're hitting 4070, like, you kind of see where we're going. Like, it's not going to be a huge jump, and it's just going to be more promoting the DLSS 3.0, which, while it is a big thing, I don't think a lot of people are going to utilize it. Just kind of like a lot of people, they sometimes use DLSS, but sometimes they want to just kind of keep it as pure rasterization as much as they can. And so that's kind of one of my bigger questions, is like, what are we really doing this generation? Because it really, from Nvidia's point, it's like, yeah, they gave you the Halo product, but in all seriousness, the rest of the products are going to be very mid. Probably is equals to 30 series. Like, it's kind of, that's kind of sad, because that's, again, if we're going back by history, that's literally correlating the 10 and 20 series, where the 20 series didn't have a big boost in performance. All it was doing was just introducing ray tracing. And so now we're like, are we just here to introduce the next stage of ray tracing? Like, where's the performance for all of them? So that was kind of one of the points I want to hit with this. Again, Radeon, we'll get to Radeon when they release more information, or AMD. And one last thing I want to talk about, this came on my radar this weekend, was Razer is introducing an Android gaming handheld. And so for me, when I looked at that, I was just kind of like, okay, so this is the fourth device that's promoting this type of gaming, like, on the go. And so my biggest question is, how big is this audience for? Because you know how we've had gaming on our phones for a long time. There's plenty of kids who love gaming on the handheld. You know, strap one of these Kishis on there, or if they go just thumbs in or get gamer specific cell phones. Um, but now that you're seeing more of these devices pop up, which is exclusively gaming primary. You have this, you have the Logitech gaming device, which is also pure streaming. That one's a worse take, but it's there. And then you also have something like the, let me see if I can find it, Retro Pockets, but obviously everything's just trying to emulate the Steam Deck, which while it is a great deal, it's also something of just like, you know, it has the power to be very convenient and very cool, but obviously battery power is always an issue. You only get a couple hours, and so that's why I'm like, what are we? Is everyone just trying to hop on the van just because Steam Deck and the Switch were so ultra successive? Because again, we're looking at the Switch. It's the king of the crop. Nothing's dethroning this. It's gonna take over the PS2 this year, or already has. And it's running for that. Actually, no, rephrase that. It's probably beaten the PS4 sales already, and is gunning for PS2. And so we're seeing this now, where it's like, what's gonna take the top, and people will say, well, what's Switch gonna do next though? And it's easy. Switch is gonna do what Nintendo wants to do. It doesn't matter because everyone's gonna buy their games. And let's say they have some type of 4K input, maybe some type of thing. But even then, I don't even think they would do that. Because as you could see from the consoles that are promoting themselves as 4K masterpieces, can't even do that. They're stuck at 30 frames per second, not even 4K. We're looking at 2K. And again, this is a demanding game and was highly... There were some pockets filled by Nvidia, I suspect, for the ray tracing achievements. But again, it's just like that type of thing where it's like, you can't be serious. Running the frame rates and visualization rates is a PC only type of deal. Because if console tries doing it, you're gonna hit that red stop sign a lot sooner, and it's just gonna lead to disappointment and just a lot of friction. PCs, they update every couple of years. Obviously, they gotta keep making the bigger and bigger product. Consoles, you buy it once, and you're hoping it supplies you with a good amount of games for a couple of years. You don't have to. Don't play the resolution race. The resolution, play the frame rate. Make sure your console is comfortable to play in. And for Nintendo's credit, they've tried. Like I said, it's cheap, but it's very efficient and it gets the job done. And for some of those titles, it is enjoyable to play, but also limitations for that price. And so I kind of want to reference that there with the kind of gain of all these streaming and gaming devices. I'm like, where is this rat race headed? Because to me, I just look at this and I'm like, are you guys just trying to pick up table scraps? Or are you actually trying to compete? What's going on here? Because internet has yet to get very comfortable for these type of online gaming, outside your house. And so it's the type of deal of I don't know where this is going. But hey, I am just some guy in a chair talking about gaming stuff. So we'll see. Other than that, again, it's been 2 weeks, so I'm keeping pace kind of. I kind of wanted to give a week and just kind of let all the releases happen, and then all these other news came by, so I'll probably do this again in another week or two. We'll see. There's always, if there's an interesting topic that I want to talk about, I'll try to fast pace some topics to talk about, but for generally, I was like, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll do a review on a game. I am gonna play Plague Tale myself on the PC, and so hopefully it runs well, and I'll be able to enjoy that. But as of right now, want to keep it focused, topic based about certain stuff around PC and consoles. So we'll kind of stop here and just kind of go from there. So thank you very much. Like and subscribe, I guess. And yeah.